You'll learn in this Trendlines video, 1. What a loudspeaker configuration looks like, 2. How to spot them on your charts, 3. What are common price patterns after these configurations, and 4. What time frames do these formations most commonly happen in? So we've talked about trend lines, and now we're going to go into a specific pattern for trend lines, and that's a loudspeaker. So the loudspeaker pattern or configuration is when we get a higher high and a lower low. So normally when we're trading a higher high pattern or higher highs, higher lows pattern, or lower lows, lower highs, we're looking for a specific trend in the market. And here we're kind of getting the exact opposite. And what we get is when we have a high, highs are being made, and then also on top of that, new lows are being made. So what happens is we get this pattern where if we draw trend lines for them, now these aren't 100% standard trend lines, but this is a really good way to get an idea of why this is called a loudspeaker, because this is what happens is we're starting in this narrower band on the left side here. So this left side is a narrower band, and we're getting is this expansion of the price that this market's trading on. The technical definition of this is 100% just higher highs and lower lows, whereas normally we're looking for our highs here to be successively higher and then our lows to be successively higher as well, which would give us more something that would look like this, where we'd be getting our highs, our lows, our highs, and then if our lows were making it higher than our previous lows, higher highs, higher lows, which would be a general uptrend in the market and a lot easier to trade. But instead we're getting this pattern of the loudspeaker. We'll show another example of this on this chart here. So what we have again are, we have area here, we're getting higher highs, and we're getting the lows, lower lows, lower lows. So again, when we draw the trend lines for this, what we get is this kind of expanding range that the market is trading in. Now, instead of trending in this particular direction, it's just opening up and widening up of the price area that the market is willing to and has traded in. And why can this be a problem? Well, the main thing is the fact that when the market, and we've talked about this before in other videos, when the market is expanding its range, so when it's starting in a very narrow range here, well, that's right where the market has been trading, has been known to trade. Then the market expands here, and so all of this area, which is now there's a higher disparity between the highs and the lows, and then it keeps expanding to an even higher disparity. Well, all of a sudden, all of the highs and lows in this area and all of the resistance and support levels are considered to be less significant because they've obviously been broken time and time again. So when the market's going down here on this third box area, what we're seeing is the fact that the market's able to more freely move within this price area. And that's one of the things that we have to be careful of when we get this particular loudspeaker configuration. So what that means is the fact that the market, although it might, like you can see here, it starts to find a little bit of a band that it kind of wants to trade within. It's still not a solid area which is controlled by resistance and support levels. It's within this whole large area from the time prior of the loudspeaker where price was able to move quite freely, and that can be extremely difficult to trade because we're trying to trade support and resistance on this chart. When we look at the levels of support and resistance, so many of them have been broken or not held or have been pushed even lower. So it's hard to find areas where we want to put our stops or we want to possibly enter trades after our loudspeaker configuration. We're kind of going to have to wait for the market to level out and find a new value area where there's high liquidity and the market just calms down a little bit to allow us to find areas where there's closer resistance or support levels that we can trade off of and base our stops off of. Let's look at another example of this. So here again we have highs, lows, highs being made, more highs, more lows. So again, we'll draw the trend lines for this. And again, what we have is the loudspeaker configuration. These trend lines are representing the expected moves in the market. And as you can see with the lows, the expected move isn't happening. With the highs, it's almost unrealistic because the market's gone so low. So if we were using a standard trend line to recover from this gap right here, especially since the low here was broken, can be quite difficult for the market. And then all of a sudden in the area post, you can see a lot of bouncing in the market because all of the levels prior have been broken. It's not an area where a lot of trades are being based off solid levels of resistance or support, where many traders have decided, okay, this is where the market's going to turn around. This is where we're going to draw the line on the lowest price or the highest price. So it gets in this area past the loudspeaker configuration. It gets quite difficult to trade until a new trend has emerged. Now, some of you who have been trading with highs and lows for a period of time might notice that this low is higher than this low, and this high is higher than this high is lower than the next high. And so that's a standard high-low pattern. You're not wrong. You are completely correct and have a very astute eye for this particular pattern. But what we're talking about is a smaller time frame within it. And as we've talked about before, the larger time frame or the larger outlook is always dominant. So if we zoom out, all of a sudden, this particular loudspeaker is just part of a standard high-low pattern, and quite a good one at that. We see the lows, highs, so we see 1, 2, 3 higher highs, 4 higher highs. That's a very rough outline. You could draw it a lot more in detail. But you do see this part of a high-lows pattern. So why does the loudspeaker configuration matter? Well, it matters because a lot of times we're trading on a lot smaller time frame. You can always look out to a higher time frame or look up to a higher time frame and find a pattern. But that higher time frame might not be completely relevant to you. You can be trading on a daily chart and look up to a weekly chart. These particular patterns, like we talked about with the loudspeaker configuration happening here, it'll be a blip on the chart. You won't even notice it on the higher time frames. But when we're drilling down and we're trying to find the best price possible or the tightest stop possible to give us outside of standard areas of resistance and support, we really have to pay attention to certain areas like this because they can make it very difficult in the area past it to trade. So even though this is part of a larger pattern, there's always the larger pattern happening. You know, the crude market started at, well, it made its way up to over $100 and then made its way down to 40. Within that time period of all the way down to 100 plus, down to around 40 plus, there were a lot of individual patterns. There were times when the market went up, there were times when the market went down. But, you know, we might not be trading on a yearly outlook. We're trading on 15-minute, 5-minute charts, 60-minute charts. So these smaller patterns within patterns are quite important. And that goes for another example that we did here. Move the tools on this. This particular loudspeaker, although it wasn't very pronounced, again, was just part of a larger movement in the market. The market was trending upward in the upwards direction. But when we're trading on a smaller time frame like this one, on this particular chart's a 15-minute chart, this loudspeaker configuration can modify our trading when we know that in the area past when we see this, and this definition of the higher highs, higher lows, or you can just slap a trend line on it and just say, okay, when you start to see this pattern when the highs are going higher, the lows are going lower, we know that the area past in the mouth of the loudspeaker, I don't know exactly what that would be called in real life, but this mouth can be very difficult to trade within due to the increased volatility and price movement in the loudspeaker configuration. And when we're looking for these loudspeaker configurations, like I said, we can always go to a higher time frame to find a specific trend that's happening in the market. But when we're looking at these, some of the best times that I find to look for them are in the 60-minute and 15-minute charts. They can happen on any time frame, but these are time frames that I find are are some of the best to spot this particular trend line pattern. Hope this gave you a better understanding of this particular trend line pattern of loudspeaker configuration. Now you have the ability to spot these on your charts. I recommend right now you go and open up your charts and look for these patterns, and especially look for the trading post of these patterns, because that's one of the main things we're looking at. We're technical analysis traders. We're looking at information, data on the chart, and what may happen post that particular area. So when we see these, we want to be looking in the area past for higher volatility possibly, which makes it more difficult to trade. And sometimes one of the best trades you can make is no trades at all. When you see an area of higher volatility or that just doesn't have levels that you feel comfortable to trade off of, especially after a particular configuration like this, it may be best to just stay out of the market until the market either levels out and finds a band that it enjoys trading in or starts trending again. Or you can always pop to a higher time frame, and then the loudspeaker configuration that you might have seen on the chart will be blended into the background of the larger, more dominant, higher time frame.
Do you have any trading topics that you'd like covered? Leave a comment below and we can dive deeper into all things trading. If you just enjoyed the video, please subscribe or leave a like.